Welcome back to the second meeting of our Virtual Environments and Game-Based Learning in the Classroom Forum. Looks like we have a smaller crowd today. Some people are off on travel, but we'll still have meaningful conversation, let's hope. So one thing I would like to suggest is that we not use the webcams. Roger Seals said that will slow down our communication bandwidth, so that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so today our meeting is about the delivery platforms, and our main questions are: what technical infrastructure is required for content delivery? What are its maintenance requirements? What is the key to ensuring the longevity of these systems? So the focus here is really on the technology, what is required to make this work, and who has expertise. Last one is especially important because we want to know how we can share that expertise. So our expected outcomes today are to continue to produce our map of projects and PIs and identify collaborators for sharing content, artifacts, assessments, and we want to know who we can turn to for technical support. We also want to continue using the website to disseminate information. We have a couple of updates there on assessments. We'd like to get more of a conversation going there if we can. So our agenda for today would be to introduce people joining for the first time, and it looks like we have repeaters this time. There might be others joining later. Some people had other meetings, so we let them introduce themselves when they come. The main bulk of our day will be spent on the guided discussion, and then Jungwoo is going to go through some website updates, and we'll talk about our next meeting. So we'll skip the participants for now and move on to the discussion points. We've identified 5 general topics that we need to talk about. There can be many others, so if there is something else that you think we need to talk about, make sure you let us know as we go along. So the first question is, what technical infrastructure is required for content delivery? What are its maintenance requirements? One of the questions that we've been grappling with was whether to use a virtual environment or whether to just go for a web-based tool implemented in JavaScript that's a standalone thing, or maybe just implement something in Java and deliver it as an applet. What thoughts do you have about that? Does anybody want to volunteer there?
Yeah, so I guess I can chip in a little bit here. This is JR?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think I can only speak from my own experience, but in terms of our project, we had to use Second Life, and basically I think we had a lot of difficulties in using that Second Life platform because, of course, I mean, the first obstacle was the money coming up with, I mean, these monthly fees and the annual, I guess, maintenance fees. I mean, I don't know what happened since we used it. So there was this financial burden, but then also they had to go through some updates in terms of the clients. So these updates were very unpredictable in our case. So when we were in the middle of the class, for example, somehow all the clients were outdated and couldn't be used anymore. And so we had some crises like that. So that's why we decided to move on to another platform instead of Second Life. In this case, an open source platform, which is almost identical to Second Life, but an open source version of Second Life, which is called OpenSim. And we also had a lot of troubles again with that, but now different kinds of, I guess, troubles because we have to kind of support ourselves. And money-wise, of course, we were paying much less, but at the same time, somebody had to maintain the server. Somebody had to really understand what was going on in terms of managing the platform and so on. So I think there are pros and cons, but I mean, I know probably Stephanie is still using Second Life at the moment, so I just wanted to hear from people who are using Second Life today, whether there have been any changes, significant changes in Second Life, and things are much better now or not.
Um,
Well, I know. I mean, we're using Second Life, and I think there are still some of the issues you raised. But I guess maybe one improvement is that they now do their major updates. I think only on Tuesday mornings or something like that. So it's somewhat more predictable, or maybe less unpredictable. But the advantage we've found with Second Life is that if there is a problem, even something very minor that maybe the students have with objects not rendering correctly or having a problem with their viewer or something, there's a lot on the web that they can, with lots of places they can get support or just read for a quick answer on how to solve some minor problem. So that's one of the nice things we found about Second Life is the amount of user support, and also it's, although we pay a monthly fee for the server space, everything is maintained for us. We don't have to deal with updates to if Windows comes out with a new operating system, we don't have to redo any of our code or things like that would occur if we were using something that was more web-based or JavaScript. It's just sort of taken care of for us, and our stuff doesn't look outdated in
Yeah.
3 years.
yeah.
But do you think it's affordable in general? I mean, the pricing of the platform?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, well, we're paying about I think we're paying $180 a month for the island, because Second Life does now have, I guess they reinstituted their educational discount, so it's half price the normal cost. I mean, I guess it depends on your department or how much your school is willing to invest in this. But I think it's probably cheaper than hiring somebody who has a skill set that includes working with OpenSim, and things like that, because those people are not a dime a dozen.
Oh yeah, I definitely understanding that.
Kurt,
but you're right, there are trade-offs.
Yeah, Kurt, do you use lab fees?
At my school, no, we don't. But that would be, if we were going to replace our chemistry labs with, with a full set or even a partial set of virtual labs, then certainly, if they're not breaking glassware, they can pay for, they can pay for the server space. Or if we were using software, like late night labs or something like that, we would make them buy the software just like they buy a textbook. So yeah, I think lab fees would be a reasonable way of deferring the cost.
Yeah. And Jungwoo, we have a question from Palome who is not using a microphone today. She asks, what are the pros and cons of using OpenSim as compared to Second Life? So you talked a little bit about the freedom from Second Life updates, but what other advantages are there?
I think one of the advantages is basically we have access to the source code, so we can do whatever we want to do in terms of the platform. If we want to make some modifications or if we want to make some tweaks and so on, but the downside is, again, that expertise we need. Unless, for example, I am an expert in OpenSim, which I'm not, it will be extremely difficult to be able to pull off something like that. And at the same time, in terms of continuity, let's say there was a PhD student who was helping out all these things uh, with the project, and once he left, for example, there wasn't anybody who could definitely support the project we were working on. So I think a lot of it is really depending on having that expertise and being able to really deal with any technical issues on your own. If you have that somehow down, then I mean, I don't think uh, OpenSim is in any way inferior to Second Life. But there was actually one issue. I'm not still sure whether it is really us or OpenSim, but in terms of the scalability, I think we had some issues. For example, if we had like 20 students trying to use OpenSim at the same time, I mean, the server would shut down, or those types of technical difficulties we experienced. So again, I mean, I don't really know whether that's really us not configuring the system properly to make it more stable, or it's something inherent in terms of OpenSim. So those are my observations. Another thing I think is the nice thing about OpenSim is I think this same thing probably is possible with Second Life, but we have these XML files you can use, and you can just drop this XML file in the OpenSim environment, and then it will basically configure everything in the environment in terms of the 3D environment. So all the objects will show up, all the terrain will be set up automatically for you. And we did have some of these XML files that were already available. So setting up an environment was very easy, because all you had to do was find the right XML files and then drop them in the server. And all of a sudden you have this island with all the buildings and objects you really probably need for some of your courses. So in that sense, I think it was great. But again, once you have the island, you still have to go in there, and then if you want to make some changes and do some fine-tuning, you have to know what you're doing. So that's also very time-consuming to do something like that. And one more thing to talk about, I guess, is the availability of these free objects. So we did find some online sources where you could just go and download these objects from the website. And these were all free objects. So when we wanted to populate the island with the objects, we didn't really have to make too many of our own, because all we had to do was really go out there and grab them. So that was another plus with using OpenSim. So the only big downside for us was really this scalability and the stability issue, because when we really wanted to do a big showcase type of thing, we would always face some sort of a technical difficulties, which were somewhat embarrassing. So we're trying to still figure out, I mean, what the problem is. So that's where we are.
So,
I mean, I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say one other issue, and I should say I've never used OpenSim, although I'm kind of familiar with it. You know, but one issue that's true for, I think, any online environment, but especially for OpenSims, is that if you want to disseminate your project to, you know, other schools, you know, if you've built something in Second Life or in OpenSim, you know, there's not a ton of people using Second Life, but there's even fewer people using OpenSim. And so when your available audience is going to be less. So you might build something fantastic and you know how to maintain it and everything, but you know, there's going to be fewer people willing to put in the time to be trained or to learn how to maintain it themselves, and so your project has less, you know, has less appeal to a wider audience.
So,
but like I say,
Yeah.
that's true for Second Life as well.
you know, in terms of,
Well, one comment. Oh,
go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah,
Oh,
one comment on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, one comment on that is really the fact that OpenSim is using the same client as Second Life, what Second Life is using.
Mhm.
So the only difference is where you're getting connected. So you point your client to a particular server, in this case, OpenSim server. So on the end user side, I mean, they don't really see any big difference because they're still using the same interface. So in that sense, I think it's pretty similar. But again, of course, there are subtle differences here and there, but they still use the same client. That's just
Oh,
one
I
thing
see.
bring up.
So it sounds like OpenSim and Second Life are very similar in the look and feel. My understanding is that with Second Life, anybody, if as long as you have an open island, anybody can find your island and look at it. But that with OpenSim, the access is really restricted to people to whom you give specifically
Exactly.
give access. So, Kurt, is there an advantage from what you're doing to using the open environment in terms of connectedness? And then also for both of you, what is the advantage of using this type of environment instead of using some other tool?
Well, I guess in Second Life, the default setting is for your island to be open for anybody to view, but you can restrict access to parts of your island or to the whole island. For instance, we have on the island that we've built with Texas A&M, I believe part of it may be open to the public, but the actual spaces where the students are performing their experiments, those are open only to the instructors and the students themselves. Part of what we do is we create a private group, and we only, once the students create their avatars, we get a list of those avatars' names, put them into that list, and those are the only people allowed into the experiment area. So we can, and we do that to prevent, you know, random people from coming in and griefing and messing things up. So I think you can have a high level of security or privacy. It just depends on how you want to set things up.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only question I have regarding that is how easy or how difficult it is to do this access control on this island, because I think we had a lot of difficulties even while we were using Second Life, trying to do these access control related activities.
You know, I have to admit I didn't participate in setting up the groups. I think I don't think it's terribly difficult, and that might be something they've improved over the years since you used it. But this was something that my collaborator at Texas A&M had done previously for her class, and she knew how to do it, and so she had figured it out at some point, and then we just set it up for our students this semester.
That's very good. And then another question is, I mean, how do your students actually take this new approach of teaching? Because, I mean, I've had some very interesting comments from my students saying,
well,
ranging from stupid to brilliant.
Well, actually, this morning we had our first chemistry lab, our first class of students come into the Second Life chemistry lab, and they did an experiment. They collected gas over water and determined the molar mass of the gas. And I think apparently a few of them did not want to do it. and I guess Texas A&M has an option where they can drop one lab session or something. So a few of them decided they didn't want to do it, but most of them did it. I know a few of them I talked with while I was in Second Life watching them. A few of them really enjoyed it, but I think I really can't say how much what their attitude is. That is one of the things we're gonna try and determine. You know, I think one of the things we've been emphasizing to them is some of the advantages of this. They immediately see the disadvantages, and that is they have to do this extra computer work, and they have to create an avatar out, and they do all that outside of lab.
Yeah.
They've got to learn to use this new computer program and stuff. But then we emphasize to them that, you know what, these lab experiments take like a third of the time in Second Life. I mean, you're not waiting for things just go slow in a lab, you know. It's just takes forever to use a graduated cylinder for some of these kids. In Second Life, things get sped up much quicker. So we try and emphasize to them the advantages, and you know, we'll see how much they appreciate it.
So one of the problems that we had when we were trying out our Second Life with younger students was this sense of decorum. We initially used to introduce them to Second Life and showed them how to move the avatars, and then carried on the workshop right after that. But we found that it worked out better if we introduced them to the avatars, let them get the jumping, dancing, and changing of the clothes out of the way, and then come back for a second meeting where we actually went through the exercises that we had. And then we stated, this is a classroom. There's a certain decorum that you follow. Did you have any experiences like that? And I would like to say that the faculty who were attending our workshops did the same thing. They were no different. They might have been worse. So do you have any problems with the students seeing the virtual environment as a playground rather than a formal classroom?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing we require the students to do is attend a training session, which we offer outside of the regular lab session time. They sign up for them. They have to sign up for training where they learn to use an avatar and, you know, change clothes and stuff like that, or at least keep their clothes on. But you know, we teach them the basics of how to do things in Second Life related to the experiments. And I think during those training sessions, the students kind of goof off a little bit. You know, once they learn to fly, they all take off to fly, and then they come back a few minutes later and they go on with the rest of the training. So I think we kind of followed the same idea that you had, is to have them play around with stuff on their own, and then once they get into lab, it's lab time. The other thing that we did was we modeled the Second Life location just like their real lab room, and all the students are meeting in a computer lab at Texas A&M. So they're actually all still in a classroom together with the instructor. So if somebody decides to be a jerk and take off all their clothes, they're doing that, their avatar is doing that in front of all their peers. So if a student doesn't, you know, isn't embarrassed by that, well, okay, you know, we can't really stop them, but at least there's I think some peer pressure that would prevent them from, and you know, a sense of decorum about, you know, you are in class. It might be different though if they were all, you know, at home in their pajamas, you know, doing things from a distant location.
I guess you can even approach the student and say, I mean, or tell him or her not to do it too. Right? I mean, right there.
And you can boot a student out. I mean, if it's a closed environment, you can. I think if you remove a student from the list, they get banned, and so then they have to, you know, reapply to do the next lab experiment, which you know, you can talk to them before you allow them in.
Yeah. So some of the things we've talked about go on to our second talking point, where we're looking at commercial versus open source. So we know that we have to pay the Second Life fee, and I just heard yesterday that they had the educational discount, which is awesome. But does if you do it on your own, like you are doing, Jungwoo, what kind of support do you have to provide? How much does that cost to take it on yourself?
Yeah,
Can
I
you
mean,
put a dollar or like a person hour value on that?
yeah, I mean, the maintenance is not, I guess, 24 hours a day type of thing. So it's very difficult to put this dollar amount, I mean, to how much we're spending to support the project. But I mean, I was fortunate enough to have some students working at our server room all the time. So one of the jobs they're actually assigned to was to maintain our OpenSim server. So that was just one of the things they had to do, part of a server room, I guess, employee. And I would say maybe you spent about 5 6 hours a week and so on. And um, I may get sued, but I pay around $10 for these students. So in terms of I guess money amount really spent in maintaining the server, uh, I mean it wasn't really huge. But the biggest problem I think was the learning curve. So for
Yeah.
example, for the student to really pick up the knowledge, it took him probably maybe more than 6 months, about a year, to get uh, where we are today. So again, I'll have to go through the same process with the next student after this student. So I mean that's just so painful to go through the same cycle over and over
And you said that your motivation was the
again.
cost of subscription plus
Hmm.
you wanted some control over the updates,
Yeah,
right?
just
Okay.
the freedom basically we have with the open source software so that we can do whatever we need to do with the environment. And we've got the freedom, but at the same time, we got our responsibilities too. So that
Right.
was, yeah, our
And then
downside. But yeah,
in
yeah, go
terms
ahead.
of porting from one platform to another, you took that
Mhm.
on, your crew took that on entirely by yourselves, right? Without any use of commercial resources.
No, yeah, we were all on our own, and we were frustrated from time to time. But I mean, we figured it out, but it took us a long time. And then one bad thing was, it may be possible now, but at that time, there was no way for us to, for example, import Second Life objects into the OpenSim environment. They were not really compatible. So that forced us to basically rebuild all the objects we needed in the environment, and we had to uh, do some new scripting and so on. So, I mean, of course, the overall idea doesn't change, and the overall algorithm of the scripts, I mean, they don't really change too much. But again, we had to redo the scripting, and we had to rebuild the objects. So that took us probably another year too. So,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, a year.
I mean, together, the training and
Yeah.
the redevelopment of the whole island. So it took us probably a year. So
And that was
just to get,
for, I'm sorry, and that was for
yeah.
the networking problem, right? The cyberspace network stores or network cyber
Oh yeah,
stores.
ours
Okay.
is actually yeah. There are three different things we're doing. So the first one is e-commerce security module we developed.
Hmm.
So in the module, basically, we play this game between student teams where they're trying to defend their stores against common e-commerce related security attacks. So based on the scenario, we had to program all the objects, and we had to set up the websites to simulate these e-commerce websites and the delivery mechanism from the e-commerce website to OpenSIM. So there were some technical challenges right there. And then for the second phase of our project, we did attack defense, blue team, red team simulation where students actually acting as hackers and doing pen testing against another team where they're defending their network against these attacks. So that was another entirely different scenario, and we had to, for example, do the programming. In this case, luckily what happened was by the time we were done with phase one, that's already, that was already the time we pretty much migrated to the new OpenSIM environment. So in this case, for the phase two of our project, we didn't really have to deal with Second Life and porting anything from Second Life to OpenSIM. We did everything from scratch in OpenSIM, so that went pretty well, I think.
So did it take a year to port the e-commerce site, the e-commerce project?
Yeah, that includes just figuring out how things work in OpenSIM and doing all the troubleshooting and the learning curve. And then once we understood what was going on in OpenSIM, we had to do the porting from Second Life to OpenSIM. So it took about a year before, I guess it had taken about a year before everything really stabilized.
Right. Well, that's a good benchmark for people to have. They have to make that change.
Yeah, but you can do it, I think. But the only thing that worries me still is just the stability and the predictability of the platform, because we're still trying to figure out why things crash, and somehow we don't really know why. So that is something that worries me a lot, actually. So.
Yeah, but that really somewhat gets into our next point about outsourcing versus insourcing, because as Kurt points out, all he has to do is develop his exercises. It works, and there are a lot of solutions available. And if you do it in-house, you have to train people, learn the little secrets, and then retain the expertise somehow when students move on. So have either of you worked with outside contractors for developing code or the environment?
Yeah, I have. I've worked with both. I had a small project where we developed a prototype lab experiment, and I hired a student to do it, and she did a great job. It was very good, but she was learning it as she was going along. She was a computer programming major, but she was learning it as she went. For the twos project that we're working on now, we hired some outside contractors, and they are not only technically and I would kind of artistically gifted and experienced in terms of making things look nice, and not just the nuts and bolts stuff, but like knowing where do you put plants around a building to make it look nice, just little things like that. But they also have experience that Wendy and I didn't have about how to buy a cheaper island than, how to avoid paying list price for an island. And, they had worked on other education projects in Second Life, so they could tell us, how to conduct training for students, because they had experience doing that. So we really benefited. We benefited from their technical knowledge as much as we benefited from their experience in all the peripheral things, like training students and things that we hadn't even thought of, and that I think is what makes so far has made a big difference in the success of our project.
Yeah, when we did it, we had a contractor develop the island, do the terraforming, and put in the buildings and put in the furnishings, and then we developed the activities for the students. And I would agree that the contractors are extremely, they have great artistic sense and they can do things very quickly and make them work pretty well. One of the problems we had though was ownership of the objects. They didn't, somehow the ownership didn't always transfer to us, and that created a problem. Um, so I'm not sure whether we just didn't specify what we needed clearly enough, or whether there were issues in transferring objects. But we thought about using a contractor for training the students or to have them come in and give a tutorial, but we didn't do that. So that's a really good idea. Did your contractor come in and actually train your students, or just point you to materials that could be used?
No, she trained. I mean, she recommended some training exercises that she had done with other students working on another project. And so she said, look, if you're going to have the students do these activities, here are some things that I think they need to practice beforehand. And and then she was willing to conduct that training just about whenever the students were available. I mean, she was very generous with her time to meet with the students at various hours and show them the ropes, and then and answer all their questions. And she also conducted training for me and Wendy, who are the kind of running this project, but also all the lab instructors. So yeah, they took care of everything, and a lot of it was some of the training was even stuff that we hadn't thought of, and they just kind of included it in the package deal.
Oh, wow. That sounds good. So now that you and Wendy and your crew have been trained, how do you pass that expertise on when your students move on?
I'm not worrying about that right now.
Okay.
But I mean, it is something. I mean, we're kind of early in our project, and so we're right now focusing more on getting the students to do the experiments, and we're collecting the data. As the project winds down, it is something that we are going to have to either pay very close attention to how she trains the students so that we can conduct the training ourselves, or a lot of or find another funding source, like we'll have to see if Texas A&M wants to continue offering these Second Life experiments, and if they do, then for their students, well, then then it gets back to the resources of the institution. That would just be something they would they would pay this contractor for a week of her time, and she would meet with the students every semester, and that would just be an ongoing cost for the university.
So,
but
go ahead.
Yeah,
well,
is she a local person then? Just curious.
No, I'm trying to think. No, they're not local. I mean, one of them lives in Oklahoma. I don't know where the other one lives, but I mean, I've never met them other than online in Second Life.
I see. So when they do the training, they do this over some sort of like video conferencing or something like that.
Well, no, it's all done. Well, it's done. The training is done in Second Life, but I think, well, it's a combination of online and in person, because I think all the students, we set up various training times. The students can meet in a computer lab at a certain time that we have reserved. There's an instructor or a GSA who has been trained physically in that room to help them if they have problems with their mouse or computer problems. But then Zandy, who's the contractor who does the training, she's in Second Life, and all the students log in. They have headphones and headphone microphone set, and so she conducts the training in Second Life with the students, but all the students are meeting together with an instructor present. So if there's any kind of back end problems, we can solve that as well.
So one question is, let's say your consultant somehow gets sick or no longer available. How do you somehow guarantee the continuity of the project in general?
Um, you know, if that happened, we would, you know, either Wendy or I would have to step in and you know, conduct the training, which, you know, we could do.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not all the training that we do are for kind of tasks or actions that the students would perform in Second Life related to um, the lab experiments we've developed. And you know, I was in charge of creating the lab experiment or designing the lab experiments, and one of the contractors, you know, actually built them. So I can, you know, I could train the students about everything they would have to know how to do to perform the experiments. You know, if I had to, which I hope I don't.
It's a lot of time commitment, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's outside of class, and you know, she was meeting them at 8 o'clock at night because that was what's convenient for the students, and you know.
You know, Kurt, you said that the contractors built your objects. You designed them and they built them.
Yeah.
Would you? Did you find that Did you think that you got a better product that way? Was it faster? What made you decide to do it that way?
Um, well, like I say, I had originally hired a student to build a prototype of a lab for another earlier project.
Mm-hmm.
She did a great job, but I could, you know, she was one in 1,000 students who, you know, who could do a really great job, and you know, like we were saying before, once that student graduates, you got to go find a whole new one, and hopefully they're just as good and they can pick up where they left off. So the contractors were, I guess, an attractive alternative to avoid some of those avoid some of those problems.
Did you look?
No, go ahead.
Did you look at the cost of using the contractor versus the cost of developing it in-house? Aside from the quality, I'm just wondering whether it's, in some cases, the same cost to do it both ways.
I think it can be. I mean, we had budgeted to hire, I think, 1 or 2 grad students and pay them, you know, a stipend and some of their tuition and whatnot. The contractors were, you know, and then we were buying computers for them to do the building. We were going to hire beta testing students to, you know, go through and test everything. And our big question was, could we find 2 really good students to do the building? Because that was kind of what we budgeted as far as their time. The contractors came in, the cost of the contractors was a little bit more than, well, I can tell you, we had budgeted, I think, total of 20, I think basically we had budgeted 20,000 for students to build, and then we got a hold of the contractors. They told us it was going to be about 25. And it turns out that with their ability to navigate the land buying procedure and get us the educational discount, I think by the end of the project we're going to actually come out ahead with you know, with using the contractors versus the students.
Yeah.
I think the students can do an excellent job. It was just that we had, you know, it's a 3-year project, and we had X amount of time to build this stuff, and I couldn't afford to mess around with a student doing it for a semester and then deciding they were gonna, you know, graduate or do something else and drop the project then.
We did it with all of our objects were built by the students, and it was difficult to convey to them the look and feel that we wanted, even if they could get the details right. It was about $8,000 to get the the infrastructure, you know, the buildings and the island terraformed. And I think if I had to do it over again, I would hire somebody to do almost all of it once we figured out what we wanted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it just it was incredible what they could do versus what we were able to do and figure out. Although some
Yeah.
of the students were very, as you say, they're very good, they're very creative, and they can do amazing things. They don't always want to continue working on the project now.
Yeah. Well, and I should point out, you know, we hired 2 contractors, one of whom handles the training and the aesthetics of the entire island, and another who actually designed the experiments, which was, you know, just a lot of the, you know, making the beakers fill up with water the right way and allowing them to be poured into the graduated cylinder, and when you mix stuff it turns a certain color based on the volumes of each that you mix, and you know, all the chemistry details were handled by one contractor. So if we were, you know, the cost would probably be about half of what I mentioned if we were doing something, I would say, you know, less technical. If it was just the aesthetics, and you know, if we were making a display that wasn't very interactive, that would probably take one contractor. But the level of interactivity that we needed for these experiments, that required somebody else, and so that kind of doubled the cost.
So did the contractors work together, or did they both just work with you?
I think they work as a team,
Okay.
but they kind of divide the labor up into the kind of the front end stuff that everybody sees, and then the behind the scenes stuff that makes everything work.
Okay.
So it was 2 different people, but they I think they work together a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing that just came to my mind is I always face this question about the effectiveness of the platform. For example, something like Second Life or any 3D virtual environment, because people may argue that you could develop the same experience probably using a different type of platform like Adobe Flash or any other forms of, I guess, platforms available out there. So, and then another thing is, I mean, in this 3D virtual environment, you have to do all these other things. I mean, somehow walking to the object and then doing these extra clicking and getting familiar with the environment, learning how to fly. I mean, all this overhead, is it really worth the effort? That's something I get all the time too. So have you thought about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I've thought about those questions a lot, and I've been asked those. You know, one thing that that I tell people, and I kind of thought it was more true than it really is. I would always say, well, you know, if you build something in Flash, all you've got is something in Flash. But if you build something in Second Life, the students can do that activity in Second Life, but then they can do a lot else in Second Life. You know, Second Life is kind of a neat place. At least, you know, some people think so. There's more stuff to do, extracurricular, you know, non-chemistry stuff. Honestly, I don't know if any students take advantage of that. I mean, Second Life is not as hugely popular as people anticipated it might be, you know, when it was really popular like 5 or 10 years ago. And so I don't think the overall popularity of Second Life has panned out. So, you know, I guess there's, you know, you can make a good argument that it's not worth it. But I would say, I mean, one of the things I'm kind of interested in is to see how much of that overhead, like the way you put it, is a good phrase. How much of, you know, does that add anything to the experience of immersing you in the environment? If you've got just a straightforward simulation that, you know, that's just on your computer screen, do you learn as much as if you are in that same simulation, but it's in a 3D virtual world where you're actually walking around and you have the, at least the somewhat realistic sensation of having to touch something to get it to move. You click on it and it moves or something. I wonder if that could add to the learning experience. If it makes it more realistic, they're gonna get more into it.
Kurt,
So that would be my response. But like I say, I don't really know for sure.
when you surveyed the students or assessed the students, did you ask them specifically what they thought about the environment, whether they thought the environment made them want to work with the material more?
We are. We're going to. We haven't. Like I say, we just offered the first experiment this morning. So by the end of the semester, we'll have data to answer that question. But yeah, one of our surveys is for it's a survey adapted from a survey to ask students whether they liked guided inquiry or traditionally taught lab experiments. We adapted it to ask them whether they liked real-world lab experiments versus Second Life lab experiments. And so we are going to hopefully find out, we are interested in finding out whether or not, what their preference is and what they thought was good about it and what they thought was bad.
We did that with our workshops that we gave, and the students overwhelmingly said that they liked working in that environment. It made the learning
Really?
a pleasant, positive experience. It was fun. There were some activities that we tried to do that were very frustrating, that involved moving objects around, and that tended not to be as popular. But they seemed to they really liked being in that environment. And we were testing students that were in middle school all the way up through or they like master students when we were doing it, and they all enjoyed it. They all thought it was great, except for our gates. We were trying to do these logic gates, and we couldn't get things to line up in a way that was easy for them to manipulate them. But
did you publish that?
Yeah, it was published. Actually, we just submitted a paper to IEEE. Learning Technologies, TLT, Transactions on Learning Technologies, and we also put a paper in the ASEE, which I can send you that paper.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Have with results, because the person I was working with was actually from the Communication and Fine Arts department, or Communication and Fine Arts. She was in the communication department, and her interest was in trying to have a very immersive education. We wanted to set up a situation where the students could actually get together on their own time and share PowerPoints and discuss topics. We never got that part of it going, but one of her interests was very definitely in having an immersive experience. And we even put our assessments in Second Life so that they didn't have to leave really to do the assessments. And
that's an interesting That's an interesting way to do it. Yeah, I mean, I think the literature kind of points to this idea of more immersive environments is better, but specifically, for Flash versus Second Life, I don't know. There's so many other variables as far as the quality of and the specific tasks that they're doing that I don't know if you could clearly say that one is better than the other.
Yeah, it's difficult to say because, as you say, there is an awful lot that goes into these things, and sometimes maybe just doing anything helps.
Yeah.
Anything other than being a talking head. So when we wait, yes.
Yeah. Before you move forward, I have a question. I'm heard you try to use this platform let students to do the lab work. I just wonder, you let students do the lab work alone, or they can do collaboratively together, as we do in the typical laboratory.
The way we've set up our lab experiments is that students can work together. So they are actually paired up, and two of them can, while one student is getting a, filling a beaker with chemicals. Another student can be, measuring the temperature of something else. So they can work together. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see whether they actually do work together, or whether one of them just says, I'll take this, and do all the clicking and doing everything. But I guess that's true in a regular lab as well. But yeah, they can work together, or they could do it themselves.
Okay. So another is, we talk about a lot of platform is online environmental. If they do collaboratively, then you need online environmental. But if they can do alone, do the platform need really to be online, or it's just like play the typical commercial game? You just log on the computer, they can play, go through the procedure. That's my wondering. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Well, I think, as far as I know, for Second Life, I'm pretty sure you have to always be online.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know if, that would be a neat feature to, have the whole thing done on a desktop, and then offline, and then maybe have some connection created later on to transmit the data to the instructor. But as far as I know, everything is online.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of takes us back to that discussion regarding what's the benefit of really doing this immersive environment versus something less immersive and so on. So, I guess based on our discussion just now, it could be the fact that there is some aspect of, I guess, the experiment probably doesn't have to be immersive, and maybe more effective that way too. So, that's just what I think.
Well, it goes back to choosing the right tool for the activity, which is,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to define exactly what it is about the Second Life environment, what aspects of it are the ones that we need, and which ones aren't. That will probably come out after we do these experiments for a few more years. But it just seems like the fact that we can have this whole simulated environment is something that I think we haven't figured out how to fully utilize yet, and it'll be a few more years before we can exploit that.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
there's going to be more of that.
There's, I guess I've heard of, faculty having all their students go into a computer lab and everybody logging in with their avatars, and then the faculty member shows them PowerPoint slides in Second Life.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, that's neat, but you could just show it to the whole class in the real classroom. But but in Second Life, you can have, that's, distance learning is really where asynchronous distance learning is really, I think, where it's best used. Especially if it's asynchronous, you don't have to worry about the software updates wrecking your class agenda. But having students do lab experiments paired up when the students are not in the same classroom, or the students can decide on their own to meet at a certain time. They'd all want to do their labs at 1 a.m. I guess, and they can do that in Second Life. So yeah, I think there's good uses that are better than anything else available, and there's some uses that are kind of silly.
The first time I made a presentation on our project, somebody pointed out that it was ironic that I was using PowerPoints to make this presentation. And, and I had to agree with him, and I realized that even though we need to embed some material in our environment so that the students know how to use our activities. And what we did was upload PowerPoints, which has the information, but what we should have really done is done a screen capture and had a video there. And I think that would have made more sense. So I don't think we're thinking about how to deliver the information in the best possible way always.
Yeah, definitely.
So that would have been better.
But you gotta find out. You gotta try it. You gotta do everything with it before you find out what really works best.
Yeah, I guess that's part of being an explorer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is just one more thing I wanted to add. Is that okay, Stephanie?
Yes.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to add was, I mean, this aspect of cost savings, because, for example, I think one of the environments in the Second Life that's being built is, I mean, related to computer security, and they wanted to do something related to computer forensics. And these computer forensics devices, they tend to be pretty expensive, and also just to create this lab physically, I mean, that will take a lot of resources and expertise. And if you just do it, for example, in an environment like Second Life, and then let the students somehow take advantage of the objects in Second Life, for example, the cost savings were much, I mean, the cost savings were pretty high. So,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's one aspect of looking at it, and I thought Kurt was probably doing this because of the cost savings aspect of using the 3D virtual environment too.
Well,
Right.
that's one of the potential benefits. I mean, the experiments we designed for this project were actually very, as close as possible, similar to existing experiments that Texas A&M was doing already, because we wanted to compare similar procedures. But one of the selling points is that if, you know, we don't do at my school, we don't do qualitative analysis, which is a type of chemistry experiment that generates a whole lot of waste that's very expensive to dispose of, and we don't do it because of the cost. We could do that in Second Life, or you could give every student a simulated, you know, $500,000 in instrumentation, and tell them to, you know, and from the programming aspect, it's not any more costly to make a pretend $1,000 instrument than it is to make a $1 million instrument. It's all pretend. So you know, so yeah, that's you know, that's where a real advantage is. You know, you can imagine training people working in a nuclear reactor. You know, they could find out how to make, you know, what happens, you know, what causes a meltdown. Well, you can't do that experiment in real life, but you know, you could in Second Life.
Yeah, that's a really strong motivator. That was one of the things that led me to go to this, especially with the gates for the electrical engineering, because I'm working with intro to computer science for non-majors, so they don't really need to get down there and have access to all of the circuits. It would be great, but for 2 lessons, it makes sense to give them something that's simulated so that they get a sense of how it actually works, and then they can actually connect up, create a circuit that can run some virtual machine. So that could, there's a lot of potential there for the simulations, saving money and making stuff available to students, like you say, that would not be available otherwise. So it's pretty good motivation there.
Sort of study aid, I guess.
Yeah. So if I can get my mouse to go to the next slide, which it doesn't want to do. What's going on here? There we go. So another topic is, how do you ensure the longevity of the systems? One of the things that I have 3 things that concern me. You know, how do I do the backups? How do I manage change in the project, and how do I do configuration control in the software development to make a change and then test it out and then deliver it in an organized fashion? We had ways of doing it. We would have certain avatars that would be responsible for developing, and then we tested them out, and it wasn't until we were satisfied with the way the object worked that we would actually deploy it out in our virtual workshop. But how do you handle those things, the issue of backup and ensuring that your stuff will be usable for a long period of time?
I think
we gotten there.
Well, I think we follow the same model. We you know, we have avatars created that are sort of just for maintenance and testing stuff, and then, you know, we have the avatars we use with students. And yeah, we went through a lot of testing this past spring and summer, you know, trying out the experiments and trying to make all the mistakes the students would make, and then you know, once that was done, you know, and then we had everything you know, designed correctly, then the experiments were released, and you know, and the students are doing them now. So yeah, I think that, I mean, it's definitely an issue. I think that was one reason why we chose Second Life as opposed to any of the open source systems, and that was that, you know, Second Life may not be around in 10 years, but
Right.
it's of any of them, I would guess it's going to be the most likely to stick around. I mean, you know, none of them might be around in 10 years, and in 10 years, these experiments we designed might be considered pieces of junk anyway, so it won't matter. But you know, I think virtual environments are to a point now where even if Second Life were to go down the tubes, whatever replaces it would try to be backwards compatible with Second Life, because so many people who care about this stuff have content in Second Life that they would want to resurrect in whatever new system was created.
So do you back up your environment on a regular basis?
That's a good question. Maybe I should find out about that. Yeah, I mean, I believe the contractors have a backup of it. But you know, I think that was one of the things they told us they do, and I said great, and maybe I haven't followed up on that as closely as I should.
Do you
Stephanie,
have?
I mean, don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Don't they actually have? I mean, in Second Life, so sort of a built-in mechanism to do the backing up, because I guess once in a while they should be backing up all their servers and things like that.
Yeah, but you always want to back up your own stuff. Always. That's
Right.
my rule. Not that I always do it, but I know that I always should do it.
Yeah.
And I know that that's one of the weaknesses that we have. Another consideration is that these are, like, in a way, what we're doing is installation art. It's not the regular software package that we can download and store and then load somewhere else. It's really an experience that people are going through. And I'm wondering whether we need to document these the way you might some exhibit in an art museum that's sort of there a certain way one day and then it will be gone. So we have actually made a video of our island and people going around our island with different activities. So we have a pretty good sense of what it looks like on the outside. Have you done that or been concerned about that at all? It's recording what you've done for posterity in case the platform goes completely belly up?
We have made videos, not specifically for that, although that's kind of a good idea. But we did it as part of the training, and we made some videos. I made some videos to kind of show the students what they're going to be doing, and you know, kind of introducing them to, hey, this is Second Life, and you know, we made some tutorials for them to help them get acclimated, in addition to the actual in world training. So we do have stuff on YouTube that can, you know, show people what we've done.
Oh, good. So maybe we should put some of your links up on the.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yes, I can put that on the forum.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Jungwoo, about ensuring longevity of your project?
It's really not related to the longevity question, but just one thing I couldn't ask earlier while we were talking. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so one thing that kind of bothered me was just to see how you assess the students in those experiments. I mean, do you have a mechanism to collect all the data from Second Life? Something like a central database where you can observe what the students are actually doing in the environment, and I'm sure each lab means some points for the students. So how do you actually do the grading? Is it automated? And once the students actually finish their experiments, are they automatically somehow stored somewhere?
That's something we have thought about, and I think if we had more money in the budget, we would have created something that would track student movements. Well, not their movements, but their actions. So when they click on an object, they get a menu, they choose an option of that menu, the object does something. All that data could be stored in a database, and an instructor could access that data and see, okay, the student picked this up first, then they did this, then they did that, and it would just be like watching a student do the experiment live and critiquing each step the student made. We could do that. At least the developer said they could do that. We didn't have the time or money to get into it, but and it also got to a point where we didn't have the personnel to actually go through and look at that data. So even if we did collect it, it would just sit there because no one wanted to study it that much. But it's potentially something you could do for distance learning. The way we're assessing the students' academic performance is, I think we do have some people doing kind of spot assessments of watching the students, but for the most part, they're doing the experiments, they're writing their lab reports, and they're gathering data. So we're grading their performance in the lab experiments the same way, in the Second Life experiments, the same way we assess their performance in a real-world lab. So they take the same pre-lab quiz, they're taking a post-lab quiz, and we have groups doing it in Second Life and in the real world, and we'll see if there's any difference in those two pools of data.
That's very interesting.
One of the things we did was assign each person a unique identifier, and then as they complete activities, they log on and complete a Qualtrics survey to collect information. And it would be interesting to include all of the pre and post tests in there so that they could stay in world and do all that stuff and have it all collected there in spreadsheets for us so we could analyze it later on. We have surveys that we use for assessing their knowledge, but also for assessing their getting feedback on the experience itself. But that since you can embed the surveys directly in Second Life, it can make it very easy to get for the students to give you the information and then to organize it.
Yeah, that's no, I never thought about doing the surveys in world, but that would have some advantages, like you've got the students there, and they'll do it, and they won't be doing it, Saturday afternoon while they're watching football and eating pizza, and and they're thinking about it because they're actually there.
And you can actually look at the forum results and not the forum, the survey results and see if everybody's completed it. So the TA could actually do that in real time and encourage the students.
I have a question to the Kurt. The Kurt mentioned there could be potential to record the student activity data in that platform, but didn't do that. I just wonder, is it very expensive to gather those data to be recorded and stored and for later on evaluation?
I don't know. I think our limitation was really time. I mean, we finished the final adjustments to the experiments. We finished those in early August, and we were I think it took longer than the developers planned, and we were about to start the semester, so we were very happy to have that part done. But I don't think it's that it would be that expensive. I mean, I don't know. It would be, but it's something we're definitely interested in.
Yeah, as far as I know, for example, in something like OpenSim, I'm sure you can do the same thing in Second Life. everything is really stored in this MySQL database. So
Mm-hmm.
as long as we have access to that MySQL database, I mean, we can basically trace whatever the students are doing, and if we have, for example, some things we want the students to do, we can definitely make sure the students are actually doing it because we can trace their movements in the environment. So it is technically, I think, it's feasible.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's see where we are here. We have about 12 more minutes. So we want to make sure that Jungwoo has time to go over the website with us. But this has been a really informative discussion.
Yeah.
Another aspect of this that we wanted to cover, but we can actually, do on the discussion section is talk about what expertise people have or what they're willing to share with others and what resources we can recommend to one another. It sounds like there's some good Second Life contractors out there we could know or learn about. So I'll put that up in the discussion section, so up on the discussion board, so we can carry on with that. Is there anything else we want to bring up about the infrastructure right now? Any questions? No? Okay. So let's.
I'm sorry. I was going to say one thing related to infrastructure is not just having the technical expertise, but having the support of your institution to do things like this. We have found is can make a big difference if the staff and the other faculty are supportive. It's so much easier to do things, and if they're against the idea of virtual labs, it makes it very hard.
Oh, that's a great topic. We'll add that. We'll make sure that we discuss it at one of the other sessions, because I have a feeling there's a lot of stuff there. That and dissemination, because the institutionalization is important.
Yeah, well, that would be a big part of it.
That's an issue. So we'll definitely, I made a note, we'll definitely talk even more about that issue. One thing that we would like to do is come up with a template for the projects that we're working on that will guide us in cataloging them, basically, and sharing the information. So what I'm going to put up on the discussion board is a template that I've come up with, and I hope we're just going to slip through it here. It has all kinds of characteristics of the projects. So what I would ask you to do is look at the template and see if you have any additions or changes that you would recommend for this. And then we can start going through our projects and seeing what we have so that we can share it in a uniform way. So that will go up there by tomorrow probably, or soon. So Jungwoo, do you want to go over the website now?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
So I will show you that screen. So there we go. There you go. Okay.
So just making sure everybody's seeing my screen at the moment. Do you see the web browser?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, I mean, we've gone through this already once in our first meeting, but I just wanted to make sure everybody is familiar with the environment. And once we get to the front page, you have this nice picture and the description of the website. We have these tabs you can click on. So, for example, right now, by the way, you're looking at the admin view of the website. So that's why you see this edit and track tabs. So normally you wouldn't see something like that. But anyway, if you click on the schedule tab, that's where we have all the schedules listed. And I wanted to mention this members page again. I think we already have Kurt's picture and everything, which is good, very handsome. And some people sent me their information, so I posted all their information, updated their data, but the majority of people haven't sent me anything yet. But I guess, again, I'm probably preaching the choir here because I'm only talking to the people who have sent me the data. So
I have a question. What should we put in the profile?
oh, okay. Is this Kurt?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you click on the profile, basically, we wanted to have a place where people get to know more about you and your project.
Okay.
So, for example, links to your web page, what you've been doing with your experiments with the 3D virtual environment or any related topics. So anything people should know about you and your project, I think that will be something we'd be interested in collecting in that section of the page. Is that
Okay.
true, Stephanie?
Yes, I think having a brief overview of the projects and then also what you're particularly interested in, what expertise you have to offer, what you would like, where you need assistance. I think adding those personal details would be useful too. And if you can
Yeah.
think of anything else we should include there, let us know.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll create another tab soon, which is just designed only for the description of your project based on the template Stephanie just showed. So we will need some information for that too. That's actually coming up. And then under the minutes tab, you see meeting minutes, and Stephanie and her student, thanks to them, we were able to have these meeting minutes taken care of. So if you click on the meeting minutes, we have a very detailed description of the meeting, exactly what went on during the meeting, and we're planning to do this for every single meeting. And Stephanie, I think, is editing a video of the meeting too, so we'll be posting that video shortly too. And then, is there anything to add, Stephanie, regarding the minutes?
No, we will get those up. The minutes should be there soon, and or within 5 days. That's our goal. We weren't able to make it last time, but then the movie should be up there soon as well. The video recording of the
And one thing
session.
and one thing I wanted to say was also, by going through the minutes, if you see anything you want to add or any incorrect information, also feel free to alert us, and we'll make the corrections, the necessary corrections. And then another tab, I mean, that's not very important, I guess. And finally, the discussions tab. I think we really want to encourage people to post anything related to our discussions here, and somehow we want to stimulate these discussions going online and have multiple threads and replies to the postings and so on. So Stephanie and I were talking, and we were saying we have to set our own examples here, because I guess Kurt posted something there and Ben did. So we'll do our jobs here too. But really encourage you to start posting information here and take advantage of the discussion board online as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it, Stephanie.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the control back.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
Very good. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I'll put my assessments up there as well. I just have the short ones that ask the users about their interests, so I can show you what kinds of questions we asked there. So our next meeting is on Wednesday, September 25th, and it will actually start at 3:30. We'll open the session before that, but it'll start at 3:30 Eastern. And what we want to talk about next time is the integration of virtual 3D environments, game-based learning, and digital storytelling into our lessons plan in our curriculum. We can do all this stuff, but how do we effectively integrate it into the other activities that we have? And then, you know, modeling the skills and behaviors for the students. We want them to use these tools a certain way. You know, there's always a question about whether we do that ourselves, so that the students understand how to effectively use what we give them. So that's the plan for then. And next time, we plan to have 2 longer project overviews by John Fotenhauer and Susan Peterson. They're going to give us short presentations of their projects, including PowerPoint, so that we can get a better visual picture of what they're working on. We'll try to go through projects as we go along and feature more of those. So if you are interested, let us know. So that's it. There we are. We're 3 out of 8 is next time, and that's it. I guess. Are there any other thoughts for today?
I mean, in general, I was very pleased
No,
to
I think it's good.
see all these. Oh, sorry. Were you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to say that I was really excited about all these very interesting conversations we had, and I really enjoyed every moment of the meeting. So I think we'll just keep this up.
Very good.
Yeah, it was a good discussion.
Yeah, it's really great to see how other people are dealing with the same issues. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
So I think that's it for now. We'll see
All right.
you next time.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'll talk to you again soon.